And as I followed leads from Mr. Wallace and started contacting people across the United States, I ran into meningitis outbreaks in the wake of this strain. This has been a rare inflammation of the brain and spinal cord, and comes on with flu-like symptoms, a skin rash, a stiff neck, severe headaches. And you know, we're still running into those symptoms after heavy spray days in schools and communities across North America. In Belle River, just outside of Windsor, there were 3 cases and 1 death among 3,000 people, and they vaccinated everyone. Multiple sclerosis started showing up. Chronic fatigue has been a major component linked to the spraying, as well as lupus outbreaks in Oklahoma, Kansas City, Florida, other locations in the wake of heavy spraying. And then this came up, transverse myelitis, something so rare, we rarely see it, and yet at the Cedars-Sinai Hospital in LA, 8 cases in 2 weeks after heavy spraying there hit people, pets, goats, other animals. So what do we have here? Well, we have a worsening epidemic over the past 2 years of a flu-like illness that has not been identified, a flu that is not the flu. We have, according to the CDC, an epidemic of deaths from influenza-like illness, pneumonia, and cardiac arrest. Now, since when is cardiac arrest a symptom of the flu? But that's what the CDC is reporting. And I've been a reporter and a columnist dealing with alternative health issues for years, and I have wondered at the sudden upsurge and predominance of autoimmune type diseases. We just mentioned a few: chronic fatigue, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis. Virtually overnight in the past few decades. Yes, our immune systems are under increasing attack, but I believe we are under other attack as well. I got back in touch with Dr. Garth Nicholson, and he told me that now he believes that if we look behind chronic fatigue, multiple sclerosis, fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, and lupus, in many cases, we are going to find mycoplasma, because that's exactly what he is finding, and he's also finding brucellosis. Well, as Yogi Berra said, it's deja vu all over again, because this took me right back to my research for bringing the war home and my research into biological warfare and Gulf War illness. And I'm here tonight to suggest very, very strongly that many of the illnesses that afflict us today in ever-growing numbers and severity were hatched in biological warfare laboratories and have now escaped, whether intentionally or accidentally, and are now among us today. I'll have some good news in a while, I promise. But let's follow this line of inquiry. Brucellosis developed as an aerosol during World War II at Fort Detrick, premier biowarfare lab on this planet. I talked to Don Scott, the author of the Brucellosis Triangle, and he has discovered that they were able to extract the active agent from brucellosis, discard the rest of the bacteria, so that when people got sick from this, doctors went in, they couldn't find the bacteria. This is genetic engineering at its most diabolical. This brucellosis was put in burster bombs and exploded over North Korea during the Korean War, and a plague did break out. Read A Higher Form of Killing, if you can find that book, and it documents what happened. But then look at this. Soldiers at that time who were working in chemical biological warfare were given disability compensation if they contracted a certain disease within 2 years of discharge. What was that disease? Multiple sclerosis. Don Scott says that he believes chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia are brucellosis derived. I noted in Bringing the War Home that from 1985 to 89, brucellosis was among the shipment of germ warfare cultures shipped from the American Type Culture Corporation in Maryland, near Fort Detrick, to someone named Saddam Hussein. And in fact, it was the United States who armed Saddam Hussein with the chemical and biological weapons that he turned against their own sons and daughters after slaughtering tens of thousands of Iraqi soldiers on the battlefield. Now, mycoplasma has been a long-time favorite of the bioweaponeers. Like brucellosis, it's a stealth weapon. That is, there's no inflammatory antibody response that a doctor can recognize once it's been genetically engineered. They've been playing with this since the 1970s when U.S. Marines and Air Force personnel were tested with mycoplasma, and guess what? Many of them contracted chronic fatigue and multiple sclerosis. Just around that time, 42 inmates at the Huntsville prison died after experiments with an aerosol, air-delivered mycoplasma and brucellosis were given to them along with a few dollars. But what the experimenters didn't expect was that 231 nearby residents in that town would be stricken with chronic fatigue, multiple sclerosis, lupus, cancer, meningitis, and Epstein-Barr after that experiment. The Iraqis were also very interested in the mycoplasma. So we have a new breed of stealth viruses among us, thanks to the military genetic engineers. Dr. Martin at the Center for Complex Infectious Diseases has found in a chronic fatigue patient a brand new life form. He calls it Viteria, part virus, part bacteria, part fungus. It seems to be able to change from one to the other. Symptoms are severe headaches and joint pain. So we have chemical spraying. We have widespread illness that has not been identified by doctors or hospitals. We have a lot of questions, and we have a few answers here. And I'll say right now that we appear to have two programs at work. We have the high-level spraying that we just saw the slides, and we've seen over this city as recently as today. And also we have something else going on, a low-level spraying involving helicopters and, more often, C-130 Hercules-type aircraft. And last summer I was in Pagosa Springs, Colorado, up in the mountains, a little resort community. I've just given some presentations across the southern and western United States. I was trying to relax, and I was walking across the main street in Pagosa Springs, and I just stood shocked as I saw a C-130 glide down over the town, throttled back, silent, right over this town, the spray, and then up and away. Well, this low-level spraying gave us our first breakthroughs in this case. And I'd like to show you just two more slides very quickly. Very lucky to have this. And these slides illustrate the brown gel that has been dropped in communities here in Canada, the United States, and England. This sample came from the central United States, November 1999. November 1999. And we were able to match it with a very similar sample sprayed a year previously from a low-flying aircraft in Pennsylvania. And eyewitnesses at the time thought the aircraft would hit the roof of the house it was spraying. And they had noticed tic-tac-toe and what they called weird designs in the sky. This is just one section of a garage. That's aluminum siding there that was splattered top and bottom and sides with this brown gel material. It was almost impossible to get this off even with pressure washer. This stuff is very, very tenacious. We think it's a polymer coating. The first incidents that received widespread publicity of the brown gel was, of course, Oakville, Washington, in August 1994. This is a little town, 665 people, about 80 miles southwest of Seattle. And that month, that town was covered during a rainstorm with brown gel, and virtually every person in that town became very ill with what residents told me was a really hard flu that lasted from 7 weeks to 2 or 3 months. Cats died, people became dizzy, fell down, were hospitalized. And the state health department stepped in and analyzed this material, and they found that this goo was alive. They found human white blood cells, they found a Pseudomonas fluorescens, which will give you very, very severe upper respiratory problems. And they found an Enterobacter bacteria as well, and that was confirmed by a second lab. What they didn't find out is where it came from and why the aircraft were dropping it on this population. But we do have pattern and precedent here. We have some 50 years of biological experimentation on the people of this country and the United States and England, testing various biological warfare simulants that, don't worry, won't hurt anyone, but in fact did hurt a lot of people who were susceptible. From San Francisco to New York City, Winnipeg in particular, some 2 million people exposed in England. They used ships and they used spray-equipped aircraft to deliver serratia marcescens, zinc cadmium sulfate, a known carcinogen by the way, and other material that would show up very quickly in their tests, to test dispersal rates and infection rates in the population. And the idea was if you made people sick enough to report to their doctor or the hospital, you could track the efficiency of these weapons on your own population. Oh, this is legal, by the way, at least in the United States. Section 1520 says it's okay for the Department of Defense to test chemical and biological weapons on the population as long as it's for research purposes. But in November '87, that law was amended and now reads 30 days advance notice must be given to Congress, and any human subject subjected to these tests must be notified in advance. Now, I don't know about you, but I haven't received any notification by phone or mail that I'm about to be and have been experimented on.
So that's it for today. Thanks for watching. As always, please help keep this show on air by letting your cable company know you're watching. Or better yet, tell them what you think of the show. They transcribe every one of your calls and pass them on to us. We'd love to hear what you think about chemtrails. Next week, we'll hear more from William Thomas on chemtrails, including his notion as to why they exist. See you next week. Goodbye for now.
I'll say categorically, as a researcher and a person who's writing about health for many years, that if we look behind the illnesses afflicting us now that are putting people in hospital, this flu-like illness, we are going to find fungus among us. Okay, treatment. We want to be alkaline. Fungal infections further acidify our blood with their byproducts. If our bloodstream is alkaline, if we eat that green leafy stuff and avoid the fun foods, my primary supplement is cayenne. Cayenne. Heat up your blood. Cayenne and ginger and garlic and miso and shiitake, but cayenne. And also oxygenate your blood with liquid oxygen supplements or exercise. Very important. We can knock out these fungal infections.